They say even gods can dream. But on the cold, unfeeling throne of terror, the God Emperor of mankind has not dreamed in 10,000 years. Not since the siege. Not since his mortal shell was bound to gold and wire. His mind stretched across the stars to light humanity's way. Yet within the endless hum of the golden throne, in the pulse of the Astronomicon, some whisper that he does dream. Not of victory, not of peace, but of a single moment that refuses to die. A moment when he was still human. A final, flickering ember of the man who built an empire upon reason and fire. The Emperor's last dream is not of glory, but of loss. And in its echo lies the truth of all the Imperium's madness. And if the dream ever fades, so too does mankind. If the light of the Emperor still stirs something within you, if the weight of his silence, the tragedy of his throne, and the ghosts of his sons still haunt your imagination, then lend your strength to this endeavor. Like, share, and subscribe, not for numbers, but for the memory of the dream that built the Imperium. Together we keep his vision alive, if only in whispers. The air beneath the Palace of Terror does not move. It hums, it trembles, it sings with the ache of 10,000 machines praying in unison. The Golden Throne is not silent. It is alive with a mechanical litany, a symphony of servos, turbines, and pulsing bioconduits that feed the greatest corpse in the galaxy. Somewhere in that endless hum lies a heartbeat, almost forgotten, almost still. Light bleeds through the dark in thin golden threads, reflected off the armor of the custodian guard, who stand like statues around the throne. Their visors conceal the exhaustion in their eyes. To them, this chamber is eternity, a duty without dawn, a vow without rest. They no longer remember when they last saw the sun. They no longer remember if they have faces beneath their helms. Around them, the tech priests chant in binary ecstasy. Their bodies twitch with mechadendrites, dripping sacred oils across conduits that thrum with impossible energy. Every syllable of their hymn is a prayer of fear, not devotion, for they know that should the throne falter, the Imperium dies with it. They know that the Emperor's body is not only flesh and relic, but the anchor of the Astronomicon, the light that keeps mankind from drowning in the void. And yet, tonight, or what passes for night beneath the world's crust, something changes. A flicker, a single pulse beneath the rivers of gold and wire. A tremor that no sensor records but every soul feels. It is not power loss or static discharge. It is thought. The custodes do not move, but their gene-forged instincts tense. They feel it in their bones. That infinitesimal vibration, the faintest hum beneath the omnipresent roar. For 10 millennia, they have guarded a silent god. But now, the silence is breathing. Far above, the ecclesiarchy continues its endless liturgies. Bells ring across the cathedrals that blanket terror's skies. Pilgrims weep, bleeding feet on marble floors. None of them know that beneath their prayers, the Emperor's mind stirs in its golden prison. None know that the light guiding their ships across the galaxy might be no longer a beacon, but a dream. Inside the throne, within neural webs older than any empire, there is a flicker of color. Not gold, not light, but memory. A field of grass, green as the first spring after the age of strife. The sky above, blue and alive. The sound of wind, not war, not machinery, just wind. He had not seen such things in 10,000 years. The image trembles, dissolving beneath the weight of reality. The throne's systems pulse, dragging the memory back into oblivion. But something resists, a pulse of willpower that once commanded galaxies. The Emperor's mind pushes against the decay, clawing through static and darkness, reaching for a time before divinity. And for the briefest instant, he remembers his name. Not as a god, as a man, the tech priest's chants waver. Instruments scream in tones they cannot interpret. For a moment, the Astronomicon flares, flooding the warp with brilliance. Entire fleets across the stars pause as navigators cry out, blinded by the sudden surge of light. Then silence. The flare dies. The galaxy returns to its dim glow. But within the throne chamber, the pulse remains. The eldest custodian, Valinor, kneels before the machine that imprisons his god. He speaks no words. Words are meaningless here. He simply bows his head and listens. There, beneath the roar of plasma conduits, he hears it. Faint as a dying ember, soft as breath. A heartbeat. He feels the weight of tears, though his eyes cannot shed them. "My lord," he whispers, though his vox grill renders it into a static hiss. Are you there? No answer. Only the faint rhythm of a dream too vast for the mortal mind to hold. And yet, in that silence, something answers back. Not in sound, not in language, but in feeling. A pulse of sorrow so deep it could drown a world. Valinor feels his soul buckle beneath its gravity. For a fleeting instant, he sees visions. Not of conquest or glory, but of a face. Human. Gentle. Tired. Then the throne roars. Alarms shriek. Incense burners explode in showers of sparks. The tech priests scream in binary panic as energy levels spike and collapse. Servitors twitch and die mid-prayer, their flesh burning away beneath holy seals. The custodes stand unmoving, their armor blackened by the heat. Above the chaos, Valinor stares into the blinding light that crowns the throne. The voice that speaks is not heard through ears, but carved directly into the soul. Why? Did you wake me? Then, darkness again. The chamber falls silent. The systems stabilize. The Mechanicus resumes its chants. The moment fades like a forgotten dream. But Valinor knows what he felt, and somewhere deep within the throne, the Emperor dreams again, and the first shadow of humanity's god stirs. Sleep does not come easily to gods, and when it does, it is never gentle. The Emperor's consciousness stirs beneath oceans of pain, the currents of the warp brushing against the ruins of his mind like the whisper of tides on broken glass. His awareness fractures, part bound to the throne, part drifting into something that should no longer exist. For the first time in 10,000 years, he remembers warmth. The memory forms like a pulse of light cutting through shadow, a hall of white marble beneath the ancient palace. Before the cathedrals, before the saints, before the war to end all wars, there had been laughter, the laughter of soldiers of suns. The Primarchs stood before him, their forms ideal, unscarred by the future that would destroy them. Horus smiles, and that smile wounds him more deeply than any blade. The vision flickers. The sound distorts into static. The Emperor feels his own mind recoil, aware that this cannot be, that these images are relics of synaptic decay, fragments trapped in the bio-neural conduits of his dying flesh. But another part of him, something older, something human, refuses to let go. Around the throne, the custodies maintain their vigil. Valinor does not speak of what he felt. To voice such things is heresy even here. Yet the chamber feels changed. The air carries an aftertaste of ozone and incense, the smell of the machine spirit's fear. The tech priests argue in whispers of binary and flesh. Some claim it was a minor energy fluctuation. Others, trembling, insist they heard a voice buried within the data stream. One young Magos, trembling from the feedback surge, swears he felt grief radiating from the core processors. He is silenced before the thought finishes forming, but within the Emperor's fractured dream, memory blooms. He stands upon the surface of old Terra, long before the cataclysm. The seas are black with oil and blood. Around him stretch the ruins of pre-imperial nations. He feels the ache of humanity's failure, their wars, their arrogance, their endless hunger for meaning. He had built them a dream of unity, a dream now perverted into worship. And yet, beneath that ache, there is a whisper of pride. They survived. Against every horror they endured. Even now they call his name. He never wanted gods. But perhaps, he thinks, this was inevitable. The memory fractures again, splitting into new scenes, overlapping. The Great Crusade, the thunder of drop pods on alien soil, legions in golden light, the pride of mankind made manifest in steel and fire. Then, Horus again, the Mournival at his side, the laughter of brothers before the shadow of betrayal. The Emperor feels it, the exact moment the dream turns sour. The warmth vanishes, replaced by the cold geometry of the throne. His divine circuitry burns against the memory of flesh. The machine reminds him what he is, a living beacon, nothing more. A god who cannot die nor live again. And still, the memory persists. It should not exist. By every mechanism of the throne, his mortal recollections should have been purged, devoured to sustain the Astronomican's flame. Yet here it is, a living ghost, gnawing through his dying neurons. He reaches for it. For a moment, the walls of the chamber flicker. The light from the throne dims. Across the palace, voxcasters emit a sound no one understands. A low, rhythmic pulse that feels like breathing. Valinor looks to the throne, his armor haloed in golden haze. Beneath his feet, the marble trembles. He senses something vast pressing against the veil between mind and matter. And then, a voice. Not divine, not booming, not majestic. A whisper. A human tone carried through a dying circuit. Horus. Valenor's blood freezes. He cannot move. The word carries sorrow beyond comprehension. The ache of a father speaking to a son he still loves. The tech priests panic, flooding the chamber with suppressive null fields. Energy readings spike and collapse. Holy oils burn to vapor as servitors' eyes burst from psychic overload. Valinor does not move. He watches as the throne's radiant corona flickers, and within it, for a fraction of a second, he sees him. Not the corpse, not the god, but the man beneath the weight of eternity, looking out as if from beneath an ocean of light. The Emperor's eyes meet his own, and Valinor knows, with absolute certainty, that the god they serve remembers everything. Then the vision collapses. The golden light consumes itself. The hum returns to normal. The priests record the event as an anomalous fluctuation in the Astronomican's modulation pattern. The ecclesiarchy will never hear of it, but the custodes will remember. Beneath the throne, in the chamber that has not changed for 10,000 years, a heartbeat continues. Faint, deliberate, impossible, and in the quiet between its pulses, the Emperor's mind whispers to itself, dragging memory after memory from oblivion. The dream is growing stronger. Within the labyrinth of cables and light, the Emperor dreams, and the dream begins to breathe. The machine no longer merely sustains him. It resonates. Deep inside the golden core of the throne, every circuit hums with a rhythm that feels alive. The Adeptus Mechanicus cannot hear it. The Custodes cannot measure it, but the warp feels it and responds. Across the Imperium, a ripple expands, unseen yet unmistakable. Souls tremble in their vessels. Psykers cry out from the depths of their ships. They see fragments of something impossible. Visions of a man standing in sunlight. Hands open, eyes full of sorrow. They awaken weeping, unable to remember why. In the palace, Valinor has not moved. He kneels before the throne as hours bleed into silence. His armor glows faintly from residual heat, his heart pounding in defiance of stillness. He can still feel the echo of the Emperor's gaze. Not divine judgment, but recognition. The kind of look one gives to something loved and lost and still longed for. The custodes are taught to banish emotion, but this night, Valinor feels it like a wound. He wonders if perhaps the Emperor's suffering has not only preserved mankind, but infected it. If the Imperium's cruelty is nothing more than a reflection of the agony at its heart. Then the lights dim again. The chamber's massive doors seal shut. The chants halt mid-syllable. A pressure fills the air. Not heat, not sound, but the presence of will. And for the first time in recorded memory, the throne exhales. Every light in the sanctum flickers with golden flame. The air tastes of dust and metal. A wave of psychic static ripples through the custodes' armor, rattling their spirits. Valinor sees shapes form in the light. Brief flashes of memory, projected like fire across reality. The unification wars. The desert wastes of Asia. The thunder of armies united under a single banner. The Emperor walking among them, not as a god, but as a king of men. His armor gleams beneath the blood-red sun. His voice carries over the roar of battle, calm and terrible. Valinor cannot tell if he is witnessing history or hallucination, but the vision is too coherent to be madness. In the dream, the Emperor stands before a dying warlord, a rival once mighty, now broken. He kneels beside the man, touches his forehead and whispers, "You will live again," in all of them. Then, darkness again. The vision collapses, leaving behind only that phrase, echoing through the psychic void. "You will live again." Valinor gasps, his breath fogging inside the helm. He looks around. No one else has moved. The tech priests twitch in confusion, running diagnostics on systems that insist nothing has changed. The throne's readings remain stable, but Valinor knows that he has heard the first words of the dream. Not a malfunction, not a memory, but intention. Above Terra, the Astronomican flares once more. Billions across the Imperium pause in their rituals as the night sky ignites with auroras of gold. In the warp, for one heartbeat, the Astronomican does not pull, it calls. Navigators weep as they feel it. They cannot explain what it means, only that it feels Human inside the throne, the dream expands. The Emperor walks through it as if testing the edges of a forgotten body. The ground beneath his feet is not soil, but memory. Old wars, ancient loves, promises that turn to ashes. He sees his sons as they once were, laughing, arguing, believing. He sees Horus as a child again, proud and bright, before the corruption, before the fall. He cannot escape the pain that follows, but this time, he does not turn away. The dream breathes deeper. The throne groans under the pressure of something vast and awakening. Sparks cascade down like molten rain. Valinor rises, every instinct screaming to act, though there is nothing to strike at, no foe to face. The machine is alive in a way it should never be, and then, silence. All at once, the power steadies. The chants resume, the illusion collapses into stillness. The golden aura fades to a dim pulse. To any observer, nothing has changed. But within the Emperor's mind, the first layer of the dream has formed, a world of memory bound by sorrow and defiance, untouched by the waking realm. He stands alone in that dreamscape, beneath a broken sky. He looks toward a horizon where the light never dies, and whispers a single thought that reverberates through the warp like the tolling of a bell. If I dream, I am not dead, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the Emperor begins to remember what hope once felt like. The dream widens. What was once a flicker of recollection now unfolds into an empire of memory, a living mosaic of faces, banners, and blood. The Emperor drifts through it as a spectre might wander its own tomb, watching the ghosts of his sons rise from the dust of time. Each figure is carved from both glory and ruin, radiant in their perfection and terrible in their truth. They stand upon the fields of the Great Crusade, the moment before the galaxy's fire consumed them all. Armor of every hue gleams beneath alien suns. The Emperor feels the echo of pride, that ancient warmth of purpose that once drove humanity to unite the stars. For a heartbeat, it feels almost real again. Horus turns first. His face is young, unscarred, the brilliance of his smile enough to ignite legions. "Father," he says, and the word resounds through the dream like a blade through silence. "We brought you the galaxy." The Emperor does not answer. He cannot. The dream binds him as much as it reveals. He can only watch as Horus gestures to the hosts of the Imperium. 1,000,000 banners of gold, black and crimson, fluttering beneath the light of dying suns. The legions cheer, the Primarchs stand together. For this moment, before the shadow, they are whole. Then the dream stutters. The sky fractures like glass. The light dims and the warmth curdles. One by one, the suns begin to fade. Leman Russ snarling against unseen enemies. Gilliman turning away in disillusion. Magnus crying out warnings that no one heeded. The golden horizon collapses into darkness, and from that darkness, Horus remains. His eyes burn with the light of betrayal. "You made me," he says, voice breaking through the Emperor's soul like a wound reopened. "You forged me to love you, and then condemned me for it." The Emperor feels the weight of those words, not as judgment, but as truth. He tries to speak, but his voice emerges as thunder, shattering the dream. "I wanted you to be better than me." Horus steps closer, his face flickering between memory and corpse, loyalty and damnation. "Then why did you make us weapons?" The dream trembles. Around them, the visions of the Primarchs dissolve into storm. The Emperor stands amid the tempest, surrounded by the echoes of his children. Some pleading, some cursing, all lost. He feels every life, every failure, every command that led them to their ends. It is not divinity he feels now, but guilt. He kneels not to a god, but to the weight of his own creation. "I gave you my strength," he whispers, "because I feared my weakness." In the waking world, Valinor feels the chamber pulse again. The throne's light flickers with rhythm, as if mirroring the heartbeat of the man trapped within it. He knows something is happening, something vast, something forbidden. Across the chamber, the Mechanicus cry out as data streams collapse, filled with noise that sounds like voices. Millions of overlapping tones, each one human, each one calling the same word: Father. The Emperor's dream is no longer confined to his mind. It seeps outward, through the warp, through the throne, through the very faith of mankind. Across the stars, Psykers fall to their knees, overwhelmed by sudden visions of gold and sorrow. In one Hive city, A dying child murmurs a name she could not know. On a distant warship, a navigator sees a shadow of a man walking through the Astronomican's core, radiating light that hurts to look upon. Everywhere, the Emperor's dream becomes a storm. Inside that storm, the Emperor sees all of his sons, not as primarchs, not as demigods, but as the children they once were. He sees them as he first imagined them, curious, loyal, human. For the first time since his ascension, he smiles. It is not a divine expression, but the weary, fragile smile of a father who finally allows himself to mourn. And in that single gesture, the dream deepens, pulling him toward the moment he has long tried to forget, the vengeful spirit, the final duel, the fall of Horus. The memory that should never be relived beckons from the darkness ahead. The dream condenses into fire. He stands once more on the bridge of the vengeful spirit. The air shimmers with heat and the stink of burning ozone. The decks hum with the echoes of a war that can no longer be undone. Beneath his feet lies the ruin of a sun, and before him the wreckage of everything he built. The Emperor remembers every detail. The flicker of the hololithic displays, the blood smeared across the sigil of the lunar wolves, the sound of Horus's breathing, ragged, defiant, human. For all the centuries that have passed, the moment still cuts like a fresh wound. In the dream, time refuses to obey. The battle folds in on itself, becoming both beginning and end. He sees Horus as he was, the favored son, radiant and unstoppable. And as he became, eyes blackened by the warp, armor slick with betrayal. Both images overlay until they are one terrible beauty, a creature of light and shadow locked in eternal conflict. "Father," Horus says, voice echoing through the void, "you made me to love humanity, and then you told me to destroy it." The Emperor cannot deny it. In this dream, there is no need for justification, no veil of strategy or necessity. He sees through his own past arrogance, the belief that he could shape perfection and still keep it pure. He sees the hubris that made him a god in everything but name. Horus steps closer, the light of the dying ship painting his face in gold and red. "You called me War Master. You gave me your will and then feared I might wield it." His words are not accusation, but lament, a hymn to the bond that once held the Imperium together. "Was I ever truly your son, or only your reflection?" The Emperor tries to speak, but the words twist into thought. "You were both." And then the duel begins again. Power floods the dream. Bolts of psychic energy crack the hull. Firestorms tear through reality. The Emperor moves with impossible speed, but every strike feels slower than regret. Each blow against Horus is a denial of love. Each parry, a prayer to a god he refuses to be. He remembers the final moment, Horus's eyes clearing, the corruption retreating long enough for sorrow to return. "Father," Horus had whispered, voice breaking, "I was wrong." And then, for love of that single human instant, the Emperor struck with mercy instead of fury. He spared his son for the blink of a heartbeat. And in that hesitation, doom found them both. Now, in the dream, he relives it without distance. He feels the weight of his hand driving through armor and flesh, the psychic shock consuming everything. He feels Horus's life fade in his grasp. Not a traitor's death, but a son's release. The Emperor falls to his knees in the vision. Around them, the vengeful spirit dissolves into light. Horus's body becomes dust, his voice a fading echo. "It wasn't the galaxy we lost, Father. It was each other." Silence swallows the dream. Back on Terra, the throne vibrates with low harmonic resonance. Valinor staggers as unseen pressure fills the sanctum. Across the palace, machinery wails in sympathetic rhythm. Every servitor freezes, every lumen flares gold. For an instant, the throne chamber smells of ozone and iron, the scent of a battlefield remembered by a god. Within the Emperor's mind, the fire cools to ash. He stands alone in the void, watching fragments of armor drift away into nothing. There is no triumph, no divine wrath, only the unbearable stillness of consequence. The dream shifts again. Horus's voice lingers, soft as a confession. "If you could dream, Father, would you forgive us?" And for the first time since his mortal death, the Emperor answers, "I already did." The words ripple through the warp like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Somewhere across the galaxy, 1,000 Psykers awaken screaming, their minds filled with the sound of a father's forgiveness. Ships lose contact, machines glitch, prayers falter. None can explain the tremor in the Astronomican's pulse. Valinor falls to one knee, overwhelmed. The custodian's spirit burns with awe and dread. He senses the truth behind the miracle. This was not divine power rising. It was grief given form. And in that grief, the Emperor feels something long lost ignite within him. Not godhood, not authority, humanity. The dream does not end. It only deepens, reaching toward the final remnant of what he once was. Beyond Horus, beyond guilt, lies a silence waiting to be broken. A name that has not been spoken since the beginning. The flames fade into quiet. What remains of the vengeful spirit disintegrates into particles of golden dust. And the Emperor stands alone inside a universe of ruin. The war has ended, but its echo refuses to die. He drifts through memories turned hollow, corridors lined with the shadows of his sons, laughter trapped like insects in amber. Every step he takes stirs the ashes of a civilization that once believed it could conquer eternity. The dream folds inward. Where battle once roared, there is now a whisper. He hears their voices, faint as candle smoke. Sanguinius's last breath, Magnus's cry for forgiveness, Dawn's steady faith even as his brothers fell. Each word cuts deeper than any weapon. Each face is a mirror of his own ambition. He sees now that the Imperium was never born of destiny, but of desperation. Humanity had begged for unity, and he had answered with control. In the silence, he senses motion. A figure approaches through the haze. A boy, not a Primarch, not a soldier, but a child with eyes too wise for his age. The boy looks up at him and says, "You promised us a dawn." The Emperor kneels, though the dream does not demand it. "I promised light," he murmurs, "and I gave you fire." The boy fades, leaving only the echo of that accusation lingering in the air. Across the throne room on Terra, Valinor feels the tremor return. The throne's reactors hum with strange resonance, a slow rhythmic pattern that reminds him of breath. He looks toward the withered figure bound to gold and wire and imagines, against all reason, that he hears the sound of weeping. The Mechanicus logs it as condensation leaking through the cooling vents. Valinor knows better. Within the Emperor's mind, the dream expands again. He sees not the glorious banners of the Crusade, but the countless nameless dead who filled its foundations. The worlds burned for unity, the lives sacrificed to keep the myth alive. He hears their prayers rising through the warp, twisted into songs of worship. They no longer remember his face, only his absence, and yet they love him still. That love is what keeps the Astronomicon burning. It is also what chains him here. He realizes now the paradox that defines his eternity. To sustain humanity, he must never wake. To free himself, he must let them die. There is no mercy left in the universe for a god who understands the cost of hope. The dream begins to break apart under the weight of this truth. Shards of memory tumble into the void. Horus's dying eyes, the laughter of Russ, the sorrow of Guilliman standing alone on Macraga, writing laws to bind an empire that no longer believes. The Emperor reaches for them, but the dream collapses faster than he can grasp. His mind fractures into 1,000 golden sparks, each one fleeing toward a different corner of time. One spark drifts outward and touches Valinor's mind. The custodian gasps, falling to his knees as a flood of vision engulfs him. He sees Terra as it once was, green, alive, filled with voices. He sees the Emperor walking among mortals, unarmored, smiling, and he feels a thought press gently into his soul. Forgive them, forgive yourself. Then the light vanishes. The chamber falls still. Valinor's fellow custodies rush to him, but he waves them away. He cannot explain what has happened. To speak of it would be heresy. To deny it would be betrayal. Deep within the throne, the Emperor's consciousness contracts again, retreating into the only refuge left to him, memory. The dream has cost him energy. The Astronomicon flickers, but he does not regret it. For in that moment of weakness, he has remembered something vital. He can still feel. And feeling, he realizes, is the last defiance against oblivion. The dream stills, poised on the edge of something vast. He senses the warp shifting, reacting, whispering his name in voices not entirely human. The boundaries of thought and reality begin to blur. Beyond regret waits revelation. The Emperor breathes, if thought can breathe, and the cosmos answers. The flicker of his mind touches stars and Psykers alike. Across the galaxy, every being sensitive to the warp looks up from sleep with tears in their eyes, though none know why. The dream continues. It has only just begun to understand itself. Terra breathes, but only barely. The planet that once ruled the stars lies beneath a shroud of perpetual smoke, its sky a cathedral of ash and industry. The sun never touches the ground here. Light arrives only through filtered glass, fractured into sanctified gold by the towers of faith that pierce the clouds. The entire world is a mausoleum, alive with movement, yet dedicated wholly to the worship of death. Pilgrims crawl across the shattered plains that surround the imperial palace, their flesh raw and bleeding from the poisonous wind. They chant as they move, voices merging into a single endless hymn that vibrates through the air like machinery. Each step is an offering, each breath a prayer. None expect to see the throne. None ever will. But still they come, billions of them, because even a glimpse of the palace walls is enough to feel closer to divinity. The city stretches upward in layers of devotion and decay. Manufactorums hum like heart chambers. The ecclesiarchy's towers echo with sermons that have never changed. Somewhere in those towers, a preacher raises his voice above the noise, proclaiming that the emperor dreams of their faith, that every sacrifice feeds his eternal light. The crowd believes they must. To live without belief here would be to confront the horror that their god may no longer listen. Far below the surface, the custodes guard the sanctum as they have since time began. Valinor stands among them, golden and unmoving, yet inside he feels the weight of the emperor's dream pressing outward. He remembers the heartbeat he once heard, the impossible pulse that no sensor could record, and now he hears it in the rhythm of the crowds above, in the cadence of their worship. It is as though Terra itself has begun to echo the throne. The tech priests work in ceaseless ritual around the divine machine. Their canticles are not songs but code, binary verses spoken through rusted vox grills. They feed Prometheum into conduits as if feeding a god with incense and blood. To them, the emperor is no longer a man, not even a symbol. He is a process, a sacred engine that must never be allowed to cease. They replace faith with maintenance, holiness with circuitry. Yet in their eyes flickers fear, a terror that one day the prayers will fail, the circuits will dim, and the light that guides the Imperium will vanish forever. The air inside the sanctum is thick with heat and sanctified smoke. Valinor walks among the priests, the golden glow of his armor reflected in pools of machine oil. He watches them whisper to the cables, pleading for the machine spirit's favor. None notice the faint vibration beneath their feet, that same subtle thrum he has learned to feel rather than hear. It is the throne's breath, the emperor's dream, leaking into the waking world. Above, the city never sleeps. Pilgrims burn their bodies into candles for his glory. Penitent processions march through the avenues carrying icons taller than tanks, their shadows spilling across the bones of ancient cathedrals. The air smells of ash, oil, and sanctified rot. The people chant the same 3 words over and over. He is watching. But Valinor knows better. The god they serve does not watch. He dreams. Within the sealed core of the throne, awareness flickers. The emperor senses the endless tide of prayer rising from the planet above him. The sound is distant, muffled by 10 millennia of machinery, yet he can feel its rhythm resonating through the cables that bind his flesh. It does not comfort him, it suffocates. He feels their faith pressing upon him, like the weight of a galaxy, a billion desperate minds demanding meaning from silence. He wants to answer. He wants to speak to them, to tell them that he never sought their worship, that he built them to stand without him. But the machinery swallows every impulse, translating will into power, compassion into fuel. The Astronomicon burns brighter, and the prayers grow louder, and the silence deepens. Valinor gazes up at the throne and wonders if perhaps the Emperor can hear the hymns. He wonders if somewhere inside that endless dream, the god of mankind weeps. The thought terrifies him, yet he cannot stop listening. For beneath the thunder of machinery and the chant of priests, he thinks he hears something new. A rhythm that does not belong to the engines, a whisper moving through the circuits like a heartbeat trying to return. He looks toward the golden figure on the throne, and for an instant the air shivers with light. The heartbeat becomes a word, one word, soft, mournful, human, terror. Then the noise swallows it again, and the silence of the living tomb returns. The days within the palace have no measure. Time is a blur of gold and grey, a perpetual liturgy that neither begins nor ends. Within the chamber of the throne, the air feels heavier than gravity itself, every molecule saturated with the weight of devotion and despair. The Adeptus Custodes never move unless commanded, Yet even their stillness has begun to tremble beneath unseen pressure. Valinor stands among them, his armor polished to a mirror sheen, his spirit dimmed by endless duty. He has lived longer than empires, and in that time has watched the slow decay of meaning. To guard a god who no longer speaks is to become a statue in a forgotten temple. Each day, the tech priests enter in their red vestments, trailing cables and smoke. They murmur binary catechisms as if soothing a restless machine spirit, their metal fingers sliding across glowing runes. They speak of voltages and spiritual harmonics, of the sacred equilibrium that must never falter. Yet behind the coded prayer is fear, for they too have begun to sense something moving beneath the surface of their faith. Valinor watches them work. The Magos at the head of the procession pauses before the throne, head bowed so low that the mechadendrites trailing from his skull scrape the marble. His voice crackles through the vox. "We keep the flame eternal, O Master of Mankind. We keep your light alive." The words fall flat. For the first time, Valinor wonders if the Emperor can even hear them. He remembers the flare from weeks before, that impossible surge of energy, the whisper that carried through the air like a soul awakening. It has not happened again, yet its echo lingers. Sometimes when the lights flicker, Valinor imagines he hears footsteps inside the throne itself. He does not tell the others. Such thoughts are close to blasphemy, and even the most perfect of men are not immune to fear. Beneath his calm exterior, his heart stirs with questions no custodian should ask. What is vigilance when the object of devotion no longer exists as flesh or spirit? What is duty when purpose becomes myth? He gazes up at the golden husk that was once the greatest of all men and sees not a god but a prisoner of his own mercy, a being chained by love for those who no longer understand him. Outside the palace, the ecclesiarchy preaches of miracles. They tell the faithful that the Emperor's will guides every battle, that his gaze judges every sinner, that his voice still thunders through the warp. They do not see the hollow truth, that the throne is both tomb and engine, that the Emperor's silence is the only constant left in a galaxy built on screams, and yet the silence is not absolute. Valinor feels it again, a tremor beneath the floor, gentle but undeniable. The lights dim, the incense burners flare, the Magos freezes mid-incantation, eyes wide. A current runs through the chamber like breath drawn after too long submerged. The throne glows faintly, not with energy, but with awareness. Valinor's voice cracks the stillness. He lives. It is not a declaration, nor a hope, merely an acknowledgement of what he senses. The others do not respond. Their training forbids belief in anything unproven. But even through their stoicism, he feels their fear. The light fades as quickly as it came. The tech priests resume their chanting, though their tone is shaken, uncertain. Valinor remains motionless, but his mind races. The Emperor's dream is growing louder. Whatever lies within the throne is no longer content to remain memory. Far above, in the spires of the ecclesiarchy, a storm begins to rise. A choir of Psykers in the Astronomicon temple collapses mid-chant, bleeding from their eyes. Their minds scream of golden light, of a voice too vast to comprehend whispering through the warp. The High Lords order silence, claiming it is merely a strain of madness among the weak. But in secret, even they begin to wonder if the God Emperor stirs. In the throne chamber, Valinor closes his eyes. For a heartbeat, he imagines he can hear the same voice. Faint, burdened, human. It speaks not to command, but to confess. "Forgive me." The custodian opens his eyes to emptiness once more. The voice is gone. The lights return. The priests finish their prayers. Everything appears as it should, yet Valinor knows the truth. The Emperor dreams still, and with each passing moment, his dream bleeds further into the world. Night on Terra is indistinguishable from day. The same furnace glow seeps through the sky. The same clouds of incense and ash drift over the broken towers. Yet somewhere beneath that unending haze, a change begins. A vibration too subtle for instruments, too intimate for the mind to name. It moves through the palace like a sigh breathed by the world itself. Valinor feels it first. Standing at the base of the throne, he senses the pulse rise through the marble and into his bones. The tech priests falter mid-litany, unsure if the rhythm they hear belongs to machinery or miracle. The vox chorals crackle with static that almost sounds like words. A few adepts collapse, blood running from their ears. The eldest among them, orders silence, but the silence will not come. From deep within the throne's labyrinth of gold and wire, something speaks. Not in language, not in sound, but in a resonance that bypasses flesh entirely. It ripples through every conduit and cable, a tremor of consciousness pressing against the edges of reality. The custodies straighten as one. The air becomes heavier, charged with the scent of ozone and dust. Valinor takes a step forward. "My lord?" The question dies on his tongue. The light around the throne flares, not blinding but soft. Warm, like sunrise remembered. Through the glare, shapes move. Faint silhouettes of long-lost warriors, outlines of sons and brothers. The dream has broken through its cage. Then, amidst the storm of radiance, a word forms. Only one. A name. It drifts through the chamber, as though carried on the breath of the dying. A sound without origin, yet every soul present hears it within their hearts. It is not the name of a world or a legion. It is a person's name. Fragile, human, intimate. The tech priests record nothing. Their senses fail to register it, but Valinor knows it is real. The name repeats once, weaker, like an echo retreating into darkness. He does not recognize it. It is not one of the Primarchs, not a saint, not any name written in the Imperial archives, and yet it strikes him with unbearable familiarity, as if it belonged to the first man the Emperor ever loved, or perhaps to the child he once was before eternity claimed him. The chamber quakes. Sparks shower from the conduits. The throne's reactors fluctuate dangerously, teetering on the brink of collapse. The priests rush to stabilize the output, shrieking prayers that sound more like screams. Valinor ignores them. His gaze is fixed on the golden figure, motionless and eternal. And for a moment, impossible, horrifying, beautiful, he sees its lips move. The whispered name escapes again, and with it comes a wave of emotion so vast it cannot be measured. Sorrow, joy, longing, forgiveness, all fused into a single breath. Valinor falls to his knees. He feels tears sear the inside of his helmet, though custodians were bred to forget such weakness. Above, in the cathedrals of terror, choirs of Psykers collapse mid-hymn. The ecclesiarchy proclaims it a miracle. The Adeptus Telepathica calls it an anomaly. Across the Imperium, astropaths report hearing the same syllable vibrating through the Astronomicon, a name without translation, resonating in every dialect at once. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light withdraws, the pulse fades. The throne returns to its measured hum. The adepts rise shakily, muttering of data loss and corrupted readings. No one dares to speak of what they felt. Only Valinor remains kneeling, hands trembling against the marble floor. He knows that something within the Emperor has awakened. The dream is no longer confined to the mind of a dying god. It is reaching outward, testing the boundaries of faith and flesh. The name, whatever it was, hangs in the air like an unanswered prayer. Valinor lowers his head. "We heard you," he whispers. "We will remember." Far within the throne, beyond comprehension, the Emperor dreams on. The name he spoke drifts through the warp, like a spark carried by wind, passing through light years and into the hearts of those who still hope. For a fleeting instant, across a galaxy drowning in war, countless souls look to the heavens and feel, without knowing why, that they are not alone. The silence returns, vast and patient, but it is no longer empty. Beneath it beats the faint rhythm of life reborn. The living tomb has learned to breathe again. The warp is not a place. It is a feeling given shape, a sea without surface, a scream without mouth. Yet tonight, within that screaming sea, a light moves, golden pulsing alive. It travels through the currents of unreality, like the heartbeat of a dying god refusing to still. The Emperor's dream has crossed the boundary. No longer confined to the throne, his consciousness drifts into the immaterium, not as a mind but as an afterimage of will. It shimmers across the tides of madness, illuminating horrors that recoil from its touch. Demons hiss and scatter like shadows before dawn, their forms collapsing into formless smoke. The light does not chase them, it merely exists, and existence itself becomes an act of defiance. Among the currents, human souls drift, the dead of 10 millennia, the faithful and the damned alike. They see the light and mistake it for salvation. Some cry out his name, their voices joining the endless litany that feeds the Astronomicon. Others reach for it and are burned away, unworthy or unready to face what the light truly is, not divinity, but memory. the memory of humanity before fear, before worship, before the chain of empire. Far across real space, navigators open their warp eyes and gasp. For a heartbeat, the Astronomicon blooms brighter than it ever has, a sun within the storm. Ships lost for centuries glimpse its glow and turn their prows toward it. Some make it home, others vanish as if swallowed by mercy itself. In every case, the crews speak of warmth, of voices whispering comfort in languages long dead. They call it miracle, the Mechanicus call it anomaly. But in the warp, the truth is simpler. The Emperor is dreaming outward, and his dream has learned to see. Within that light, he walks again. The landscape around him is a reflection of thought. Mountains made of memory, rivers of forgotten faith. Every step reshapes the terrain. He looks down and sees faces within the soil. Soldiers, scientists, children, billions of lives that once looked to him for purpose. Their eyes open as he passes, not in fear but recognition. They do not worship here, they remember. He kneels beside a stream of light and touches the surface. It ripples, showing him visions of the living galaxy. Worlds at war, cities burning, priests shouting his name into deaf heavens. He feels every prayer like a raindrop on his skin. It is too much. Even in this dream, he cannot bear the collective need of 1 trillion souls. Their faith sustains him, but it also chains him. He wonders, not for the first time, whether salvation was ever different from captivity. The current pulls at him, drawing him deeper into the warp's heart. There, at the edge of comprehension, he senses another presence. It does not threaten. It listens, a consciousness vast as the void, old as creation itself. For a moment, he thinks it might be the echo of what humanity once called gods, or perhaps simply the universe remembering its first thought. It speaks without words, and he understands. You are not alone in dreaming. Back on Terra, Valana feels the throne shake. Energy readings climb beyond tolerance. The priests panic, sealing the chamber with layers of psychic shielding, but nothing can halt the surge. The air becomes thick with static. The gold plating of the dais glows white hot. Valinor raises his eyes and sees, just for an instant, the warp bleeding through the walls, a sea of shifting color, and within it, the faint outline of a man walking among stars. The Emperor's light spreads farther, touching the dreams of Psykers across the galaxy. Some awaken singing hymns they have never learned. Others fall silent forever, burned out by contact with something too pure to endure. On a remote shrine world, a blind prophet scribbles the same words again and again in blood. He walks. In the heart of the warp, the Emperor stops. The light around him steadies, forming a sphere of calm amid endless chaos. Within that stillness, he feels the ache of humanity. Every fear, every cruelty, every small act of love, the totality of what they are. He knows he cannot guide them anymore, but perhaps he can remind them what it meant to be human. The light pulses once more, brighter than any star. Across the void, millions feel warmth where there should be cold. In that instant, even the demons pause, uncertain. The warp holds its breath, and from the silence, a voice, not command, not prayer, but memory, whispers through creation, "Remember me as man." The light fades, leaving behind ripples that will take centuries to die. The sea of souls settles, changed forever. And in the stillness of Terra's deepest chamber, the Emperor's body remains unmoved, his golden face serene. But beneath the machinery's endless hum, Valana hears it again. Faint, rhythmic, alive, a heartbeat. It begins as rumor, a single voice in a crowded shrine. A dying woman in the Underhives claims she saw a golden figure standing beside her cot, hand outstretched, the scent of ozone and roses in the air. She says he spoke her name, not as a god but as a father. By morning, she is dead, but her body is unmarked, her face serene. The priests call it heresy, the people call it miracle. Within a week, thousands repeat the tale. Within a month, millions believe. The Imperium has always fed on myth. It is the only sustenance left for a species drowning in its own darkness. Yet this is different. The stories are not born of ecclesiarchal sermons or sanctioned dreams. They come from soldiers, navigators, psychers, those too far from terror to be guided by doctrine. Their words spread like wildfire through the void. They say that when all hope was gone, a light appeared, that it spoke not of judgment, but of forgiveness, that it felt human. Valinor reads the reports transmitted through secure Vox channels. Each account is different, yet somehow the same. A presence in the warp, golden and warm, shielding ships from storms, silencing demons, guiding fleets through impossible tides. He does not know whether to rejoice or fear. The Emperor's dream is no longer silent. It moves through creation, touching the souls of men as though reaching for them in their sleep. Across the ecclesiarchy, panic wars with ecstasy. High lords convene in secret, debating the meaning of these manifestations. Some call it proof that the Emperor's ascension nears completion, the dawn of a second coming. Others whisper darker possibilities, that what moves through the warp is not him at all, but an echo, a parasite feeding on faith. To question it aloud is heresy. To believe it blindly may be worse, and yet, miracles continue. In the Segmentum Pacificus, a world under siege from the archenemy is saved when the warp storm above it parts like curtains drawn by invisible hands. Witnesses claim they saw a human silhouette suspended in the clouds, radiating light. In the eastern fringe, a ship lost for a century reappears in orbit, its crew alive and unaged, their navigator claiming she followed a golden road that sang of home. Even the Ordo Hereticus cannot suppress all accounts. The myth has taken shape, and it grows stronger with every retelling. Valinor kneels before the throne and whispers the words forbidden to any custodian. "Are you trying to return?" The question burns him, yet he cannot unsay it. The throne answers with silence, but within that silence is something deeper, a rhythm like breathing, a faint pulse that fills the air with warmth. He feels it through his armor, through his bones, through his soul, and he realizes that the dream does not wish to return. It wishes to remind. Beyond terror, the dream spreads faster. Entire Hive cities wake to the scent of lightning. In the warp, ships drifting toward doom find themselves steered by invisible hands. No voice commands them, but they feel a presence, gentle, deliberate, sorrowful. On a moon orbiting Cadia's grave, a child born blind sees a man of gold in her dreams, who teaches her to speak the word hope in a language no one else remembers. The Imperium begins to fracture under the weight of faith reborn. Some see these signs as proof of his awakening. Others denounce them as the lies of the warp. The ecclesiarchy proclaims the Reverie doctrine, decreeing that the Emperor now communicates through vision rather than voice. Pilgrims flood the stars. The Inquisition burns 1,000 worlds to contain the hysteria, but the dream cannot be contained. It seeps through reality like sunlight through cracks in stone. And still, within the throne, the Emperor's body remains unchanged. The golden husk breathes only through the will of machinery, yet the light in the warp grows ever brighter. The boundaries blur. What is dream and what is divine? What is God and what is memory? Valinor stands alone before the throne, his reflection trembling in its mirrored plates. He feels the Emperor's sorrow, his yearning, his impossible mercy. He realizes the truth no sermon will ever speak. The miracles are not signs of return. They are memories set free, fragments of humanity cast adrift in the warp, reaching out to remind mankind that their God once walked among them, and that he still dreams of them not as subjects, but as children. Valinor bows his head. "If this is heresy," he whispers, "then let me burn with it." And somewhere beyond space, the dream answers, with a warmth that feels like forgiveness. The light has become legend. What began as whispers in the dark has become a storm of belief that sweeps across the stars. Every shrine world burns with new fervor. Pilgrims fill the void, building monuments of faith upon the ashes of their doubt. Yet the more they worship, the stranger the miracles become. The line between blessing and terror begins to blur. On one world, the faithful kneel as golden rain falls from the sky. It tastes like iron, smells of burnt air, and sears the ground where it lands. The priests call it holy. The survivors call it judgment. Elsewhere, warp storms collapse into silence, their madness replaced by a vast stillness that frightens even the demons. Ships emerge intact, their navigators blind but smiling. They say they saw a face in the storm, not wrathful, not radiant, only weary. The Emperor's dream stretches thin. His consciousness, scattered across the immaterium, drifts farther from the throne that anchors it. The light that guided fleets and soothed the dying begins to waver. Some say it has grown brighter. Others claim it flickers like a candle in a vacuum. No one knows which is true, for the warp no longer obeys the logic of men. Valinor stands vigil before the golden husk, listening to the machine's steady hum. He has read the reports, the miracles, the anomalies, the madness. None of it fits the patterns of faith or reason. It is as though the Emperor himself no longer knows what he is becoming. Each pulse from the throne feels heavier now, laden with power that strains the very air. The Mechanicus whisper that the Astronomican's core has begun to change frequency, resonating not with the Emperor's will, but with something else, something born from his dream. He feels it too. The warmth that once felt like mercy now carries an undercurrent of sorrow, even warning, as if the dream were unraveling under its own weight, struggling to remain tethered to the living. The custodian closes his eyes, trying to sense beyond the hum of machinery. For a heartbeat, he glimpses it, the Emperor's light drifting through the warp, vast and fractured. It touches Psykers like gentle fire, igniting visions of impossible beauty and horror. Through that dream, he sees everything, humanity's wars, their prayers, their endless cycle of faith and cruelty. And within that vision, he begins to question whether he still recognizes them at all. In the heart of the warp, the Emperor stands upon a sea of memory. Around him swirl the remnants of his creation, souls caught in eternal motion, luminous threads of past and future. He feels them pulling at him, begging for meaning, for salvation. But the weight of their desire drags him downward. The dream begins to collapse inward, folding upon itself. For every act of love he remembers, 1,000 acts of hate echo louder. His light falters, dimming to a dull glow. And then a voice, not his, not human, whispers from the dark. You are not dreaming alone. The sound is ancient, woven from the fabric of the warp itself. It is the chorus of everything that was ever worshipped. Gods long dead, ideals abandoned, spirits of forgotten faith. They speak as one, neither cruel nor kind. All light becomes shadow, all gods become ghosts. The Emperor does not answer. He cannot. The words are not wrong. The dream trembles, threatened by the truth it can no longer deny. Back on Terra, Valinor feels the temperature drop. The chamber darkens. The power conduits flash once, then stabilize. The priests cry out in alarm, their hymns faltering. To them it is merely another anomaly, but Valinor senses the deeper meaning, the moment when faith touches the edge of revelation and recoils. He gazes at the throne, at the still figure enshrined within it, and understands. The Emperor's dream is reaching its limit. It has touched every corner of creation, but it cannot remain dream and God at once. Something must break. The machinery, the faith, or the mind behind it all. And yet, even as the light flickers, it does not die. It endures, trembling but defiant, like a candle facing the storm. For the Emperor, even fading, refuses to let humanity vanish into the void he fought to conquer. Valinor kneels and whispers into the silence. If this is the end, then let it be his choosing. In the warp, the light steadies, a final act of will, a choice to dream one moment longer. The veil shudders, and beyond it, something vast begins to awaken. The sound comes first, a low, grinding groan that moves through the palace like the echo of a dying star. The throne has begun to break. Deep within the sanctum, the sacred machinery trembles. Golden panels shift and warp under unseen stress. Conduits snap. Holy seals burst into smoke. The tech priests fall to their knees, shrieking binary prayers as sparks rain from the ceiling. They call it the machine spirit's agony. But Valinor knows the truth. It is not the machine that screams. It is the soul inside it. He rushes forward, voice lost beneath the roar. The Emperor's body remains motionless, yet the air vibrates with power, thick as molten glass. Every lumen in the chamber flares and dies, casting the room into rhythmic flashes of gold and shadow. The throne's heartbeat has become a storm, pounding through stone and steel alike. Above Terra, the Astronomican falters. Fleets scattered across the void lose their guiding light. Millions of navigators cry out as their minds fill with images. Fragments of the Emperor's dream bleeding through. A field of green, a sky of blue. The face of a man smiling at the dawn. Then the vision twists into flame. Worlds go dark. In the sanctum, the custodes stand unmoving despite the quake. They have trained for every apocalypse but this one. For the end of faith itself. Valinor stares into the glare, and in its heart he sees him. Not the golden corpse, but the light within, pulsing with defiance. The Emperor is fighting something unseen. Not the warp, not death, but the cage of his own making. Valinor understands then that the throne was never built to hold a god. It was built to contain a man who had become too vast for flesh. Now that man is trying to return. The Magos Prime staggers toward the dais, voice shaking through vox distortion. Containment field breach, output, exceeding all thresholds. We cannot. His words dissolve into static as fire erupts from the core. Valinor shields his eyes, armor glowing red hot, but he does not retreat. His duty is not to survive. It is to witness the throne cracks. Golden panels shear away like scales, exposing the black heart of the machine, the place where metal and soul intertwine. The scent of burning ozone fills the air. The figure within remains seated, serene, eyes closed. Around him, the warp bleeds through reality like ink through cloth. Shapes coil and vanish, angels, monsters, memories, all part of the same dream. Across the galaxy, the miracles falter. The light that had healed the wounded, guided ships, and stilled storms now turns erratic. Some see visions of radiant salvation, others of the Emperor's face burning away into the void. On shrine worlds, statues crack from crown to base. On frontier planets, entire congregations wake screaming, their faith burned to cinders by the brightness of his agony. Valinor kneels, not in prayer, but in awe. "My lord," he whispers, "what are you doing?" The air answers with thunder. The Emperor's voice echoes, not from his lips, but from every surface, every circuit, every molecule of gold. It is both human and infinite. I am remembering. The light intensifies, washing over the custodes, stripping away armor, identity, time. In that brilliance, Valinor sees glimpses of everything the Emperor once was. The warrior, the builder, the dreamer, the father. He feels the grief that birthed the Imperium, the love that damned it, the unbearable solitude that followed. Then the light dims, leaving silence so deep it feels alive. The throne ceases its roar. The air cools. The priests rise, trembling, whispering that the systems are stabilizing. They dare to hope that the danger has passed, but Valinor knows better. He can see the fractures crawling through the base of the dais, black veins spreading like frost beneath gold. He can feel the weight of the Emperor's dream pressing harder, straining to break free. The throne cannot hold him much longer. Outside, the sky over Terra splits with lightning, not from storm, but from energy beyond comprehension. Pilgrims fall to their knees as a column of light pierces the heavens, reaching toward the stars. For a fleeting instant, they believe they see the dawn. But Valinor, kneeling in the shadow of the breaking throne, knows the truth. The light they see is not sunrise. It is fire, the fire of ending, and of what may come after. Silence follows the storm. The air in the sanctum tastes of iron and incense, heavy with the scent of things ending. The throne no longer hums, it breathes. Each pulse of light radiating from its core feels like the beating of a colossal heart, struggling between life and surrender. Valinor stands before it, motionless, yet every cell of his being vibrates with awe and terror. The Emperor dreams still, but the dream is no longer contained. It spills outward, washing through the chamber, into the warp, into the souls of all who ever called him God. In that radiant flood, Valinor sees not visions but truths, the fragments of a man trying to reconcile what he was with what he has become. In the dream, the Emperor stands upon a plane of light, infinite and weightless. The horizon bends like glass, reflecting everything he once built. Around him gather the silhouettes of his sons, their faces softened by memory. They do not speak. They are not the broken demigods of history, nor the monsters they became. They are as they were on the first day of creation, unspoiled, unscarred, and whole. Horus stands nearest, his eyes dark but clear. He does not kneel. He simply meets the Emperor's gaze, and in that silence is forgiveness. The others form a circle around them. Gilliman's calm sorrow, Sanguinius's angelic serenity, Magnus's burning regret, even the shadows of those long lost to corruption. They all stand together in the light, not as warriors, but as children. The Emperor looks at them and feels the weight of 10,000 years fall away. He speaks softly, the words echoing through eternity. "You were my hope." No one answers. The dream trembles as if unwilling to hold such tenderness. The suns begin to fade, their forms dissolving into dust and light, scattering back into the sea of souls. Only Horus remains a moment longer. He reaches out his hand, not for forgiveness, but for peace. The Emperor clasps it, and for that heartbeat, Father and son are reconciled. Then the dream shifts. The field of light collapses into darkness. He stands alone again, surrounded by the echo of voices fading into silence. A void stretches before him, the vast gulf between divinity and death. He senses the warp pulling, beckoning him to dissolve into it, to let go of identity, of purpose, of form. But he resists. Even now, even at the end, the Emperor refuses to yield to oblivion. He has seen what lies beyond, a peace too complete, too empty. Humanity still fights, still believes, still clings to the fragile flame he once kindled. To leave them now would be to let the night win. And so, he stays. Not as God, not as man, but as the dream itself. Back in the throne room, the light burns softer now, less fierce, but more alive. The custodes fall to one knee, shielding their eyes as the golden aura fills the chamber. The priests weep openly, their mechadendrites twitching like nerves exposed to grace. For a moment, they feel what faith truly was before it calcified into dogma, connection, compassion, and awe. Valinor steps closer, the heat scalding his armor. He raises his hand, not in defense, but in reverence. "My lord," he murmurs, "what do you see?" And the air answers with the faintest whisper, the end and the beginning. Across the galaxy, the Astronomicon flares one last time, brighter than a supernova. The warp convulses, its tide stilled by light that burns through nightmare and sin alike. For a single heartbeat of cosmic time, every navigator sees the same vision. A man of gold standing on the edge of dawn, watching over humanity with eyes that are not divine, but merciful. Then the light fades. The Astronomicon steadies, the galaxy exhales. No one can say what changed, only that for that brief moment, everything felt still. The chaos paused. The Emperor's dream had touched reality. Valinor sinks to his knees as the glow subsides. The throne's hum returns, softer now, almost peaceful. He looks up at the motionless figure and feels no fear, no sorrow, only understanding. The Emperor has not risen. He has not spoken. Yet his presence fills the chamber like the first breath after the long dark. And in that stillness, Valinor knows what he saw in his final vision. Not victory, not salvation, but endurance. The simple, impossible act of continuing, to dream, to love, to exist, when all else ends. The light is dim now, but it does not die. It rests, patient, vast, unyielding. In the ruins of the chamber, the throne cools, its once furious radiance settling into a quiet, rhythmic glow. The air is thick with incense and scorched metal, the smell of endings. The surviving priests crawl from behind shattered terminals, whispering prayers they do not understand. None approach the dais. None dare to. Valinor alone remains before the throne. His armor is cracked, his once polished gold dulled by ash. Yet he kneels not as a guardian now, but as a witness. He can feel the warmth radiating from the machine, faint but steady, pulsing in time with his own heartbeat. He closes his eyes and listens. There is no voice, no command, only a sensation, the vast silence of a mind at peace. For the first time since he took the oath of eternity, Valinor feels it, the absence of sorrow. The Emperor's dream, once heavy with grief and guilt, has softened into something quieter. It is no longer the dream of empire or redemption. It is the dream of continuance. He looks up at the figure on the throne. The body is the same, skeletal, immovable, carved by millennia. Yet around it the air shimmers, alive with gold dust like motes of memory. Each flicker feels like a heartbeat, each breath of light a whisper of thought. The god who once held galaxies in his grasp is dreaming not of conquest, but of humanity itself. Far beyond terror, the dream still moves. On a frozen world in the eastern fringe, a regiment of the Astra Militarum fights its final stand against the endless dark. The night sky burns with auroras of gold, and for a moment, every soldier feels the same thing. Warmth in their chests, a pulse of courage that defies the cold. They do not know its source. They simply rise again. In the heart of a dying ship, adrift in the warp, a navigator blinded by decades of storms opens her third eye one last time. She sees not madness, but a figure walking upon the waves of unreality. A man of light, his steps leaving constellations in his wake. She weeps, not from terror, but from the beauty of it. She guides her vessel home and dies with a smile. Across the Imperium, the faithful whisper that the Emperor has awakened. The High Lords deny it. The ecclesiarchy demands silence, but faith cannot be silenced once it has seen hope. The whispers become hymns. The hymns become fire. Worlds ignite with both devotion and doubt, as though the galaxy itself cannot decide whether to kneel or to stand. On Terra, Valinor watches as the throne stabilizes. The cracks remain, but the energy that bleeds from them no longer burns. It illuminates. He realizes that this too is a kind of resurrection, not of body but of will. The Emperor endures, not as a god to be worshipped, but as a dream to be carried. He thinks of the name that once echoed through the chamber, the single word spoken in the dark. He does not know who it belonged to, a friend, a son, a memory, but he understands now that it was not a cry of loss, it was a promise. The Emperor was remembering humanity so that humanity might remember him. Not as a figure on a throne, but as a man who refused to surrender to the void. Valinor rises, unsteady. The golden dust swirling around the throne glows brighter for an instant, then fades to embers. The sound of machinery returns, slow, steady, eternal. He knows his duty has not ended, but its meaning has changed. He no longer guards a corpse. He stands watch over the last dream of mankind. He turns to the empty hall. Beyond the sealed doors, the city of Terra stirs. The sun, or what passes for it, bleeds weak light through the haze. The chants of billions reach faintly through stone and steel. An ocean of faith rising toward the heavens. He realizes that none of them know the truth. None of them understand that the dawn they pray for has already come and gone, countless times, within the silence of the man they call God. And yet, that is the miracle. The dawn may never arrive for them, not in any form they can see, but still they hope, still they build, still they sing. The Emperor's dream has become their instinct, not to triumph, but to endure. Valinor looks back one last time. The throne glows faintly, the heartbeat within it steady and sure. He bows his head, voice trembling. "Sleep, my lord. Dream for us a little longer." There is no reply, only the hum of the machine, ancient and infinite. But as he turns to leave, the air stirs. A soft exhale, like wind through an open door. The golden light brightens just enough to paint the floor before him, guiding his steps to the threshold. And far beyond Terra, in the warp's endless sea, the dream endures. It drifts between stars, neither god nor ghost, carrying the echo of a promise older than empire, that even in darkness, the light remains. The Astronomicon burns on. The throne holds, and somewhere within that vast silence, the Emperor dreams, not of dawn, not of victory, but of the simple, human act of holding on. The light flickers once, then it steadies. The dream continues.